What's going on, everybody? Welcome to After Prison Show. And today I want to introduce you to a brand new person here on After Prison Show, a guy by the name of Paul. And Paul, thank you for taking the time to do this.
No problem, no problem.
Paul is an individual that I met while I was locked up at the very last prison that I was at, a place called Indian Creek. And real quick, Paul, what were your thoughts about this prison?
I thought it sucked at first, all the TC and all of that, but at the end of the day, it was kind of positive, and I ran across a lot of unique people there. I really enjoyed the people there more than the prison, but other than that, I was close to home, so it didn't take long for my family to come visit me, so I got visits often.
Yeah.
So I kind of enjoyed that part.
The fact that you're at a prison that's in the local area where you live at, that's going to be a major plus, even in comparison to the TC, like you had just mentioned, which is therapeutic community, meaning that basically all you're doing at this place was grouping.
Right.
Paul, you're an individual that was very unique to me. We met each other for the first time at this place, and the reason that I say you're unique is because I had never really met too many people like you, and what I mean by that is just your positivity.
Coming from where I come from, when you're all the way at the bottom, when life hits you with a tough blow, the only way is to go up, and the only way to have a good attitude about going up is to be positive. So that was my take on it. It took me a long time to get to that point, but I realized that I was not doing myself any good by remaining negative. So positive is what I wanted to feed off. Yeah.
And you gave out a lot of that positive energy as well.
I sure did.
And I want to say something, and I hope you won't take offense to this. With you being such a positive person, you didn't really have a lot of problems at this prison. Everybody, for the most part, liked you there. Yeah. But I will say this. I can't remember a specific time when it happened to me, per se, but I know I could see it. Sometimes certain prisoners would receive that positivity as an annoyance.
Absolutely. The reason why they received it as an annoyance, because sometimes people like to be stuck where they are. And sometimes when you reveal certain truths to certain people, it's just like this. When truth is revealed, there's only two things you could either do with it. It's either you can accept it and do something about it, or reject it and do something about it. So the responses were different. You knew who accepted what was going on, and you know who rejected it. But my focus was just to put the information out there. My job there from my heart was to help as many people as I possibly could. In the short time I was there, I gained a lot of trust within myself because I felt good about myself releasing this type of information to people who I didn't want to see continuing the same cycle.
And I want to briefly talk about this as well. One of the ways that you helped individuals was it your prison job, working with the church in the prison?
Absolutely. I became the chaplain's assistant. And what happened was I was a tutorer. I was helping people in the GED. I was a tutorer first. And the chaplain came to me one day because he heard me speak one day. And he asked me, did I want the chaplain's assistant job? So I prayed about it. Sometimes I don't want to incorporate a lot of God stuff and what's going on. People like to hear real. But when he asked me, I felt like that would be the best avenue I could to move around like I wanted to, first of all.
Right.
And then get the message out to as many people there as I possibly could.
And let's talk about moving around the way that you want to move around. Because, Paul, look, when you got these certain type of jobs, I had one, I was a mural painter. Right. You worked as the chaplain's assistant. Right. That meant that you could go down to the gym where the chaplain and where the church was at, and you basically had a little bit of liberty to be able to move around in the prison versus what another prisoner would have.
Right. And also another great positive to that is whenever they had events there and they would cook like catered meals, I would always get a plate.
Right.
So apart from prison food, I would always get me egg rolls, chicken, macaroni and cheese. That was the best part about it. But yeah, I loved it, man. I loved it.
Look, I want to give a little bit of backstory to the viewers, first getting an opportunity to meet you. Mm-hmm. Your story is very compelling. You're an individual who's smart, articulate, you were going to college, you weren't a troublesome type of person, and it would be a major event that would take place in your life that would basically begin the trouble for you. I'd first like you to explain your background a little bit. Let's talk about before you started getting in trouble. What was your life like?
First, I had grew up in a Christian family household. Where I had both of my parents. I was born in Norfolk, Virginia, and I lived in Berkeley until roughly third or fourth grade, and then both of my parents got promotions the same year, which entitled us to move to Virginia Beach, which was a big culture shock. But my parents always instilled in us was the ability to adjust. So it was rough at first, but as time went on, I began to adjust. I grew up in church, a big popular church. I began my talent. My talent is I'm a drummer. And I never had a band lesson. I never been in drum class or anything like that. It's just my gift. So my popularity around the area began to blossom because of my talent. Because of my talent, I began to travel a lot. I went overseas 3 times with my church, establishing churches and playing the drums and meeting new people and seeing and experiencing new things. But I didn't take it as something that I should appreciate. It's something that became a sense of pride to me. And I became very prideful. I felt like I was supposed to be there. Like I think that everybody should have the opportunity I got, you know. So then all of a sudden I never paid attention in school anymore. I just was so excited about playing the drums. And I felt that I didn't need that education because I had this talent. It was taking me places I'd never been before. And then I had my brother, and my brother was a singer. So a lot of times, me and my brother, we was doing everything together musically, especially for our church. And what happened was I got introduced to something outside of Christian living when I got to high school. And that is talking about the partying and going out. And I gravitated to that scene. And because of my musical ability, people began to accept me because they knew that I was known in the area. I just used my musical talent as my crutch, as a sense of spotlight. You know, people just came all around giving me compliments all the time. So it went to my head. So it come time for graduation, and I didn't have enough credits to graduate with my senior class. And my mom came up to me and she said, son, you got to do something. And I said, well, I'm not going in the military. Well, she said, well, that would be a good option, but you got to get a GED first. I said, what options do I have? And we sat down that night and we talked about Job Corps. So August of 2005, I went to Old Dominion Job Corps in Monroe, Virginia. And within the first month, I wasn't a dumb kid. It's just that I didn't never pay attention to anything. I was just focused on everything else. So I got my GED within the first month I was there, and I began to my trade of pharmacy tech. I began to get interested in that field, and I excelled in it. I graduated with a 3.8 GPA.
Wow.
From there, I got accepted to Liberty University. So I got a job at CVS Pharmacy, working as a pharmacy technician, and then I was going to school. But when I went away to school, my brother was still here. And while I was in Job Corps, I started to find out that my brother was getting into a lot of mischief and a lot of different trouble, just hanging with the wrong crowd. And I remember coming home on a Thanksgiving break, and we began to talk, and he was just telling me that things was different, and you know, he was hanging with this and that. And I just told him that time, I said, bro, everybody's not your brother. I know I'm not here, but you got to realize that I'm going away to better myself so I can bring you with me. And but I don't think that was good enough. I think he missed me a whole lot. So Christmas time comes, and I find out that I get to graduate early during the Christmas break. So they gave me an option that I want to move to Monroe, Virginia, and I accepted it. So Job Corps helped me get a house, helped me get a car, and I was living good, man. One thing about it, for a 4-bedroom house, we paid $475 a month.
Wow.
So I love that because in that type of town, a pharmacy technician made like $14 an hour. So that rent was nothing to me. So it was time for the actual graduation ceremony. And the day before the actual graduating ceremony, I called home and make sure everybody was coming. I got to talk to my grandparents. I talked to my brother. I talked to my parents. They said everybody was coming to my graduation. That night, I had got an eerie feeling on the inside of me that night. And that same night, I got pulled over by the police for speeding. And even the police asked me, "Are you okay?" I said, "I don't know what's going on with me, but I don't feel right." And they didn't give me a ticket. They said, "We want you to slow down and have a good night." So when I got home, I didn't think about it anymore. And I got up the next morning, get ready for graduation, all excited to see my family, something that I accomplished. It was something that I was going to be able to show my parents that even though I didn't excel in high school, I took it upon myself to take the initiative to do well away from home, just to show them that I could do it. And a lot of that became the source of my life, is where I became a person pleaser than I was to be satisfied with myself. Of course, so a lot of my motivation in life was based upon people's response and people's mentalities towards me. So we went, and I show up to the graduation, and at first I go look in the crowd and I don't see any of my family there. I didn't think about it. I said, well, maybe they're running late. So I sat down in my seat and I just heard that they got to the point where they're calling everybody's name for graduation, and it was on my road to get up. So I looked back and I still didn't see any of my family. I find out that one of my friends that was graduating with me at Job Corps, she visited home where we're from. She's from Chesapeake too. And it's a coincidence because my aunt was babysitting her little brother and sister. And she came up to me and she said, "What's up, how you doing?" I said, "I'm doing great. I don't see my family out there." She asked me, she said, "You didn't hear?" I said, "I don't know. What are you talking about?" She said that you don't know that your grandparents got murdered the night before? I said, "Would you stop playing with me? Why would you even come and tell me like that? They supposed to be here right now." And then I looked back in the crowd, and then I recognized nobody from my family was there. And that's when it hit. I knew she wasn't lying to me. So my body went through so many different emotions in those split seconds, and it was on my road to get up and go get my diploma and get my certificate for completing. And I don't know how I did it, but for some strange reason, I got the strength to get up and walk across that stage and receive my diplomas. And when I got off of the stage, it was like an entire feeling of weakness came over my body. The reality started to sink in that my grandparents were married. And so I leave the graduation, and I knew that my little brother was living with my grandparents at the time. So the first thing that came to my mind is, what done happened to my little brother? I don't know where he is. Did something happen to him? So as I went to my car in the parking lot, I see my brother standing in the parking lot. And he had tears running down his face. He looked disturbed. So we got in the car, and I was like, "Man, what happened?" And I asked him, what happened? What's going on? And he didn't say anything for the first night. He just said, "I just want to congratulate you for graduating, bro. I'm here for you. We're going to celebrate you graduating." So we went out and had a ball that night. We partied, we went to the club. And so when we came home from that club tonight, I called my parents, and they told me that it was confirmed that my grandparents did get murdered that night. So
how exactly did this happen? Like, did they give you any specifics?
No, nobody. Yeah, they were shot. My grandmother was shot 8 times, and my grandfather was shot 1 time in the back of the head, execution style. So getting to that point, by this time I need to find some answers. I need to know what's going on. So as we're coming back to the Hampton Roads area from Lynchburg, I questioned my brother about what happened. And he said, "Bro, whatever happens, just know I didn't do this." And he began to try to explain the entire situation to me. In a long story short, my brother had got involved in gang activity. And they went to do an initiations thing. And initiations thing means they went to go rob for a large amount of money and a large amount of drugs to bring back to whoever their original gangster, their head or their captain was. And my brother had found out that things were going to go sideways. So when they did it, my brother ran off with the drugs, or he ran off with the money, or whatever happened. And they came looking for him. And they knew that my brother was living with my grandparents. But my brother had already left my grandparents' house to come to my house in Lynchburg when all of this happened. And they went and murdered my grandparents instead of killing my brother. So I have a very deep sense of compassion for the youth nowadays because of the gang activity we have in this area. Even while we was incarcerated, I have seen how gang activity has completely plagued the minds of our youth. They feel like their sense of security is in the flag that they bang, and it kind of bothered me because I knew I never was raised that way. I didn't even know that he was getting involved in stuff like this.
I want to stop you right here, Paul, because we got to talk about something very important to what would actually happen to you. Yeah, absolutely tragic what happened to your grandparents, right. But what happened with your brother in this situation?
Well, on the way back to the Tidewater area, I get a call from the Chesapeake Police Department, and they asked me, was my brother with me? And I said, yeah, he's here. They said, we need to talk to him about the incident that happened the night before. Do you mind bringing him here to the Chesapeake Police Department? And by that time, I'm thinking, why do you want to question him? You know, what does he got to do with anything? So my brother told me to hang up the phone, and I hung up the phone. And my brother gave me an option. He said, we can either do one or two things. He said, we could either go back here and have a war, or you're going to turn me into the Chesapeake Police Department, and I have to do what I have to do. And I didn't understand it. I just sat there, and I just looked at him. I didn't say a word to him. I don't know anything about guns. I never shot a gun in my life. I don't know anything about gang violence. I don't know nothing. So the only logical thing for me to do is let them question you down here at the Chesapeake Police Department and let you go, and then we'll handle it from there. I take them to the Chesapeake Police Department, and they begin to pull everything out of our car, check for so many other things.
They're harassing you as well.
They're harassing me, and my cousin and somebody else was in the car too with us. So they harassed all of us. Searched me, and no, I haven't been here at all, but I let them do it. And they went on with their question, and then one of the detectives come out to me and say, your brother has been cleared of the murders, but we have a warrant for his arrest in Virginia Beach for armed robbery. So that day was the last day I seen my brother free on this land.
And what year was this, and how old were you?
It was 2006. I believe I was 20. I was 20 years old, yeah.
And how old was your brother?
My brother was 18. Yeah, my brother was 18. My brother caught these charges. My brother turned 18 January 10th. The charges were brought up against him March 16th that same year. So he was only an adult, per se, 18, only 2 months. So time went on. I'm not thinking anything about his situation concerning the murders. I'm trying to figure out how we're going to get him out of this armed robbery charge or what happened with that. So 2 days later, my dad get a call from the Chesapeake detectives, and they say your brother has confessed, or your son has confessed to the murders. And my dad didn't say anything to me right away. They called my entire family to my grandparents' house to tell us the news. And that's when they revealed that my brother had confessed to the murders of my grandparents. Deep inside, I knew something was wrong. I knew that the situation had got misconstrued. Something went wrong. I couldn't put my hand on it. But the major thought that I was going through at that time was, I am about to live my life without my brother. That is my only brother. And we're 18 months apart. And everything that we did in our youth, we did together. And I was trying to figure out, how am I going to live this life without my partner? And from that time on, I was lost in the sauce. I didn't grieve. I couldn't cry because I didn't know what I was crying for yet. Yeah, it was a tragic that my grandparents got murdered, yeah. But my brother that's gone, I don't have a relationship with anybody else. like the relationship I had with my brother. So it was a shock, and my body went through a chemical imbalance during that time because my mind could not grab hold of the fact that I'm about to live the rest of my life without my brother. So this is when drugs came in. I was recreationally using drugs before, smoking weed, probably drink a beer or two. But when this incident happened, it wasn't working anymore. So I got introduced to cocaine. I got introduced to Xanax. I got introduced to so many different drugs out there. I think I tried every last one of them. But the motive behind me taking these drugs was because I didn't know how to deal with life without numbing this pain. Because every day, every night, I knew that I was torn between two things. Whether I wanted to live for my brother or whether I wanted to die because my brother is in prison. And that was a battle that I faced constantly. So what began to happen was I began to lose control of my life. The drugs became my motivation to live, to stay numb. I lost respect for myself. My parents couldn't trust me anymore because when the money was gone, I would probably do anything to get my drug of choice at that time. So a lot of things began to down spiral. I lost my job at CVS Pharmacy. I stopped going to school. I had to move back here with my parents. I was in a relationship during the time to a woman who really loved me, but she couldn't do anything for me because I couldn't love myself. I didn't know what love was anymore because my idea of love was just sent to prison. So then they come to us and say that they're trying to give my brother the death penalty. And that was another wave of shock because not only now is he away in prison, that I know he might be going the rest of his life, but now his life is on the line. And the Commonwealth of Virginia were pushing the fact to execute my brother. So a lot of things just was spiraling out of control. I couldn't keep a steady job, so that's how my life turned to crime. It was small little stuff, credit card frauds and grand larcenies, breaking and entering. But then I got hold to a different frame of getting money. I began to find somebody who knew how to tap into bank accounts. For about 6 months, we were getting wire transfers from one account to the next, coming into our personal accounts. So for 6 months, I was living off of somebody else's hard work, and I lived well off of somebody else's hard work. And then eventually I got caught, and that is what sent me to prison to see you. So I was sentenced to 12 years altogether, but they suspended everything except 5 years and 2 months. So at the end of my sentencing, I probably served about 4 years and 7 months altogether. I started off in Deerfield, then I went to Baskerville, and from Baskerville I came to Indian Creek. And during this process, I found myself without drugs, which I could have got them while I was incarcerated. But now I was ready to deal with me now. So I put myself in a position where I had to look myself in the mirror and say, what are you going to do now? Because my brother is living, but he's living well in the situation that he's in because he has come to peace with this situation.
What ended up happening with him? You said he was facing the death penalty.
Oh, well, he was facing the death penalty, so eventually they threw the death penalty off the table, and my brother ended up getting 2 life sentences plus 99 years.
For something he didn't do.
For something he did not do. And my brother ended up confessing about the murders because he found out that the gang members that were seeking to kill his life, they said, if you tell, my entire family was in jeopardy. When I say my entire family, I mean my mother, my father, and me. They were posted up outside of our house. They were watching our house to see what type of actions that my brother would have made, whether he was going to rat or was he going to wear this. So a lot of people don't understand the life that they're getting into unless you really take a look at the possibilities. So my brother at 18 years old developed the heart of a lion. And he said, I would rather spend the rest of my life in prison than to live with the fact that if I tell, my family is in jeopardy. So my brother saved us literally by choosing to confess to these murders. Now, as time goes on, the news about this story was everywhere. But the moment I knew it was the real deal is when I turned on CNN one morning and I saw my brother's face on CNN. That's how I know reality is really setting in now. So my brother confessed, and he received his 2 life sentences. And I talk to him often, but he does not talk about this situation at all. Ever since the day he got incarcerated, he hasn't talked about it. Simply because he knew that there were consequences behind his actions. So now, I don't have my brother still. He's incarcerated. My brother is now at Sussex. Sometimes I miss him because I can't share life with him anymore. But I'm also proud of him at the same time because I don't know what I would have done in that type of situation. A lot of people can say the no snitch rule always stands ground, but as we know, in today's society, snitching is at an all-time high.
You're right.
People tell on people for less than a year. My brother was facing his life and did not tell. That's something that I can have pride in about my brother, that he was a man and stood up for what he stood up for. So, you know, that's how my life turned down. So when I got to Indian Creek, by the time I met you, I had a heart-to-heart with myself, and I decided that I'm not going to wallow in my pain anymore. And the reality of life is that when something like that happens or someone is taken from you, it is your responsibility to become something valuable to someone else. That's the only way you can live with yourself and feel comfortable in your own skin. Because when I look at men now, my first reaction is, would I treat them like I treated my brother? Not that they deserve this type of love or this type of treatment, but because I don't have that avenue anymore. Instead of being a harm or a hindrance to somebody, my job is to help them. Whether I give them a word of encouragement, whether I help them along, because I'm still intelligent, there's a lot of things that I can do still. If you don't know how to handle it, it will take you out, literally. And it's not a fast death. It's a slow and miserable one. I don't have any hair on my head now.
Because of the stress?
Because of stress and depression.
I gotta say this, Paul.
Yeah.
Like what you've shared with us thus far is stuff that I could have never even imagined. You told me about your brother's situation when we spoke on the phone yesterday, but that reminded me of us being in prison and the way that you would talk about your brother. You were in contact with your brother. Yeah. You would receive letters from him. Yeah. You know, to think about, you never know what somebody has been through or what they're going through. Yeah. You were dealing with all of this that had this traumatic situation that happened to your family, and yet you were still able to be a humble and positive dude. Yeah. And I think part of your recovery, and I'm not even talking about from the drugs are their own thing, but the recovery from the pain and the trauma in your life came from your ability and your willingness to try to help other people.
Yeah, that's that was the key. I was in the hole in Virginia Beach jail because I got in a fight in the trustee. And when I was in the hole, I had to come up with a plan to stay sane, literally. Because my insanity was almost, visual to everybody.
You were losing your mind.
I was losing it. Yeah, I was literally losing it.
And that was during this last time that you were incarcerated. And Paul, again, just got released this past Wednesday. It's only been less than a week now, almost a week that you've been out. Right. You would end up serving 90 days for a probation violation because you left. They didn't know where you were. Something, very minute. Right. But why were you losing your mind so bad during this situation?
I have a new responsibility on my hands now. I'm a first-time father.
Man, congratulations.
Thank you. My daughter will be 1 year old January 2nd. And the mother of my child and her two sisters, because I am the father of three, but I am the biological father of one, has motivated me to an entire level, a new level. Because not only are my decisions affecting other people, now I have a very direct effectiveness to 4 different women. I know how important the role of a father is, especially to girls. They need someone to look up to provide and protect them. And when I'm not there, I leave them vulnerable to a lot of things. And I felt like I was useless. And when you feel like you're useless, you lose sense of purpose of why you're there. So your mind takes you through a series of changes. But for the most part, man, I was grateful that they only gave me 90 days.
Absolutely.
But during that 90 days, I missed my daughter's first steps. And that bothers me even till today because I can never get that back. But it also motivates me to stay on top of my game. It also motivates me to do everything positive so I won't miss another event or major event in her life. I was 31 years old when I had my first child. A lot of my friends have babies at 18, 19, 20, maybe even younger than that.
Yeah.
So at this time, I took the responsibility of being a father so serious, even before I had my first child, because I know the value of the position. But now, life is great. My daughter is more in love with me, and I'm more in love with her than I ever been. She is the spitting image of me. That's my twin. The mother of my child, she's a very strong woman. And me not being there and me going through a lot of the things that I've been through, for her to still want to motivate me and support me in a lot of things, that says a lot. And that's my foundation behind my relationship with my girls. That's an entirely different story about my stepdaughters. Maybe one day we can talk about that another day, but I'm good. Like I said, you said earlier, I'm working, I'm providing that way, and when I'm home, I'm there. I'm helping them with homework. We read together. They love it when we sit up and watch movies. I love it more than they do, because that 90 days really showed me the value of my time. It really did, especially with them girls.
Paul, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with us and introduce yourself to After Prison Show.
My pleasure.
Again, you're a guy that I met while I was locked up,
Right.
but you're such a powerful and compelling guy with such an amazing story and such a crazy story at the same time. I can only imagine that this sparks the interest of so many folks out there who want to hear more about what you've been through.
Absolutely.
And I hope that's something you'd be willing to share with us.
Absolutely. First of all, Joe, I honor your work ethic, because I watched the After Prison Show develop inside of a prison itself.
Yeah.
A lot of people said you wasn't going to be able to do it. A lot of people talk bad about you doing this, like it's not going to work. But this is evidence that when you put your mind to something and you put everything into it, it works.
I appreciate that.
And Joe, whenever you need me, my goal now is this is a platform for you to also maintain what you had in the dream, and now we can share this dream together, because now I have a platform to give back to so many different lives. I am honored, man. If it's one thing of encouragement that I can leave to the listeners is this: when you have an opportunity to do so, cherish those that are close to you. Don't always get caught up in the mundane things of life, because they're fading away very slowly. But when you take opportunity of each day, you value those that are around you the most. And that's what I've been doing, and that's what I'm going to continue to do. I'm going to value those that are close to me, and my love for them is going to reflect how I act in society. So, when you got an opportunity to love those close, love them strong.